Joshua Bolding asks, if I remember correctly, in some previous videos, you described yourself as a small R Republican. Could you elaborate on that? What political beliefs do you have that differ from traditional Republicans? Okay, so when I call myself a small R Republican, that's not a reference to the Republican Party of today. A small R Republican is someone who believes in republicanism, as in a political philosophy about the system of government. Basically, I don't like monarchies, I don't like oligarchies, and I'm not a big fan of direct democracy. So republicanism, as in the rule of law, or in Latin, res publica, the public thing, is my belief. I am a registered Republican currently, though I have been flirting with going independent for a while. I'm mostly just a registered Republican at this point so I can participate in the primaries, because I don't see myself ever voting Democrat, but I'm still just not happy with the direction the party's going. I don't like how Trump is redefining what people think conservatism is supposed to mean, and I think he's very bad as a, just for branding alone, I think he's really bad for the party. And I think it's going to have some detrimental effects down the road when there's a lack of younger people willing to join in. You know, like you can't have a successful long-term party if it's just the party of old people. As to what beliefs separate me from most traditional Republicans today, well, I find that hard to discern at the moment because, unfortunately, America's political parties right now are probably the weakest political institutions in the Western world. This especially became the case in the 20th century, where now American political parties are more or less driven by personality rather than by platform or ideology. The parties have very little control over their own members, and so you get some randos who can spout off crazy stuff and then face no consequences, because once again, the party is run by personality. That's why the Republican Party, despite being very ambivalent over Trump in 2016, has now gotten more or less on board with him because it's a personality-driven party. It's like the president defines the party rather than the party defining who its presidential candidate is going to be. And the reason this happened, of course, is, well, we made the process of choosing presidential candidates more democratic. And unfortunately, within democratic societies, institutions that are too democratic just become sort of populist rather than actually standing for something. And we've seen this in both cases, you know. Trump used the Republican Party as a vehicle for his own agenda, just as Bernie Sanders is trying to use the Democratic Party as a vehicle for his own agenda. Bernie Sanders does not care about the Democratic Party, and Donald Trump doesn't really care about the Republican Party, you know. He doesn't care how his actions affect Republicans down the ticket. And Bernie Sanders seems to be very much the same. So long as he gets what he wants, he doesn't care what happens to Democrats down the ticket. And that's kind of a continuation of what happened with Barack Obama. As in, Barack Obama did whatever the hell he wanted and didn't care how it affected Democrats down the ticket. And it impacted Democrats down the ticket severely. I mean, even after the 2018 midterms, Democrats are still trying to recover from 8 years of Obama in office. Because 8 years of Obama really hurt the Democratic Party at the state and local levels. But anyways, as to say, I don't know exactly how I should define how I differ from other Republicans. Basically, I think the biggest difference is that I'm not really all on board with Donald Trump. At least that's the biggest thing at the moment. Christian Weibrecht, or Weibrecht if you're German, are you to collaborate with Emperor Tigerstar this year? And also, would you rather fight Mike Tyson or Conor McGregor? Well, I think you've asked me multiple times about collaborating with Emperor Tigerstar, and it's like, I have no real reason to. I mean, Emperor Tigerstar mostly just does map videos now, and I'm not a big fan of map videos. I mean, I include maps and videos, so that's usually because I need some way of illustrating something, like, especially when I do Islamic history videos, which should be the next one coming up, I usually have to use a lot of maps for those because there's simply not as many pictures, especially for early Islamic history. I don't know how well we would get along with that stuff, but once again, I've never met the guy, never had a really quiet chat with him or anything like that, so I don't see myself collaborating with Emperor Tigerstar anytime soon. And as for Mike Tyson, Conor McGregor, I don't follow sports, much less the fighty kind. The only fighting I have ever regularly watched are colorful anime people with bright shiny hair and glowing in swords, so yeah, not really much of an opinion on that. And we have a series of questions from That Rubber Duck. When are you going to start a Discord server? When I actually start using Discord servers myself. I don't use Discord servers. I don't use Discord. I don't know Discord. So I'm probably not going to set it up. Plus, on top of that, I don't think there's a big enough demand for it. So yeah, there has to be a lot more demand for me to consider it being worth the time to actually do it. Also, what is your job outside of YouTube? Well, yes, YouTube is not my main job. I wish it could be, but it is not. I work in an office doing healthcare related stuff. I'm not a medical person at all. I do office type work. You know, sometimes I'll be updating files, sometimes I'll have to be doing mail related work. It's a lot of sort of office minutia. And I'm basically a person right now who makes the office work in a moving stuff around sense, if that makes any sense. And are you going to start up that history podcast that you used to do? I would like to do that, and I might try something like that. Unfortunately, like my old podcasting co-host came down with a terrible case of steady employment, and so he doesn't really have the time to do it anymore. And just a single person talking is not super interesting unless you're doing like a narrative history podcast, like my History of the Modern Middle East podcast. For the Casual Historian podcast, if I ever wanted to restart it, I would need to probably find either a new co-host or I would have to do it in a kind of interview style. And unfortunately, the podcast just doesn't perform nearly as well as the videos do. And so I can't really justify putting more time into starting that up unless the videos start doing better. So, yeah. That's not going to happen anytime soon, though I might record some podcasts if I get a chance at VidCon later this year, but that's still up in the air. So for the foreseeable future, I don't see it happening, but who knows by the time summer comes around. I might get a chance to record a handful of episodes. But even if that's the case, don't expect it to be like a regular thing. Bloodrider asks, do you think that the internet has been a net good or bad for the study of history? It has been a net uncertain yet. The net provides us with more access to anything. I mean, like that whole video I did about a conspiracy theory about the Pope having Abraham Lincoln assassinated, that I only found out because of the internet. I was on the Internet Archive just looking through random articles, and I found a pamphlet that suggested this concept. And then I dig more into that pamphlet and found other stuff that it was referencing, which led me down the rabbit hole, down to the whole Charles Chinnicky conspiracy theory about Abraham Lincoln being assassinated by the Vatican. But again, so it's super useful for stuff like that, but it doesn't, I think, make the general population more historically literate. The internet as a whole, I don't think makes the whole populace better at any individual thing. Rather, it makes the people who are already focused on a certain thing work better. So for people who are already properly studying history, the internet provides them more opportunities. For people who are already doing business, the internet provides them more opportunities. But if you're a person who doesn't already study history on their own, the internet isn't going to be much of a help to you if you aren't already pursuing that on your own. It's like you can give a Formula One car to a person who's never sat behind the wheel of a car before. That doesn't gonna make them a better driver. And that's kind of like what the internet is like for history or any subject for that matter. Zane Rossler asks, if you were making another video about Africa, what would your choice of topic be? I don't really know, actually. I'm quite interested in sort of the economics of empire. Like, I would really love to know more about sort of how Africa played with the economy of the British Empire as a whole. Because people tend to think, oh, imperialism is in its entirety a net benefit for the colonizing country, but that's not actually the case, especially when it came to Africa. Basically, for pretty much all the European countries, Africa was a net detriment to their experiences in colonialism. It took far more money to govern the locations, and they extracted far less wealth from them than they did, say, from India or the Caribbean. I would like to, if I had to do something about African history, I'd want to look into sort of like what the trade relations between like the African colonies and the mother countries were, and how that actually impacted the economies of either end. So that would be something, if I were to do something about it, Africa, but I don't see myself doing that anytime in the near future. Either that or it'd have to be something like Islamic related to Africa stuff, but I think like there are a couple other channels already do stuff like that, and I don't want to step on their toes too much.